everybody, my name is Bede. I'm a student of Vedanta. I live in Australia and I'm having a series of conversations with Kevin. Say hello, Kevin.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, now this is a series about Vedantic practice. So what we're going to deal with today is what is the end of this practice? What are we actually going for? And the whole study of Vedanta, everything that is built around is this idea of freedom while living. Now, this is important to know because we're not trying to get something way in the future. What we want to do is we want to be able to appreciate freedom while living. And I use the word appreciate. That's a synonym of knowledge. That's what we mean by knowledge. So when we know something, we can appreciate it. So what we're looking at is we're talking about a freedom that first of all can be recognized so that we can actually appreciate it. And secondly, we're talking about abiding in that freedom while living.
That sounds very interesting, Bede. You say appreciation is like knowledge. Can you sort of explain a bit more on that?
Well, what happens is when people use the word knowledge, they tend to think of information, things that they read in a book.
Yeah.
But Swami Dayananda is, he paraphrases what knowledge means. He says things like being alive to facts, being awake to what we are. So this type of thing, so when we're talking about knowledge, we're not talking about what we normally mean in the West by that term. Like, I know all of, it's never a question, I know all about Vedanta.
Okay.
It is a question of appreciating myself as being free.
So it's in the appreciation.
Yes, that's right. It's so that what happens is that in the very appreciation of myself, there is freedom. This is a basic principle of Vedanta. And notice how, I'm glad you brought up that word in. It's in the appreciation of myself as myself is the whole endeavor of Vedanta. And another interesting thing that Swami Dayananda says is this, is that the person who is free, the person who is wise, is one who is happy in himself because of himself, because of what he is in reality. Now, notice he's saying that wisdom, being wise, is being happy in yourself because of no other external reason. And this is being wise. So this isn't philosophic, is it, Kevin?
No, I guess it's my general experience is I'm always seeking something. So I'm not quite happy because I'm seeking something more.
Yes, that's normal. You see, so in Vedanta, there's a shift from trying to get and attain something to appreciating what already is and abiding in that appreciation while living. And this can only be done right here, right now, as I am. So it's important to kind of understand this so that we're clear on what when we're not trying to attain anything that is away from ourselves.
I guess some people might say they already are being themselves.
Well, that's the number one question. I would say that if they are happy in themselves because of themselves, that would be true in terms of Vedanta. But if I'm happy because something's happened, I'm happy because I've made money, I'm happy because I'm getting social approval, I'm happy because the weather is the way I want it to be. If I'm happy because of something external to me, then that is not the freedom or happiness that we're talking about in terms of Vedanta.
So it's a different concept or different framework of what's been talked about as being happiness.
Yes, in that sense, yes. We're talking about happiness or freedom that is not dependent upon anything other than ourselves. That is the end result of Vedanta. This is the end. So we're seeking, first of all, to, as my teacher Swami Atmaprakashananda says, is that we can't be happy unless we know what happiness is. And this is the problem. We don't know what happiness is.
Well, people would say that when they get a new house or a new car, that makes them happy. Yeah,
that's right. Then, so what we're saying is that what they're doing is they are ascribing their happiness to an external object. There's a problem with that, because when we're dependent upon an external object for our happiness, what happens when the object goes away, Kevin?
I'll be unhappy.
Right. So we're talking, because we ascribe happiness to the presence or absence of external things, we are constantly feeling bad when those things that we want go away. So what we're looking at here is that we're looking at, when we're talking about freedom, Atmaprakashananda says that freedom is like when you've got fire, you've always got heat. So when you are free, you are happy. So it's not a question of when I become free, I will be happy. It is being free means being happy. And what we're all really interested in Vedanta, first of all, is the discovery of what happiness actually is. We're interested in to recognize clearly what happiness is, and secondly, to be able to abide in this happiness while living.
A lot of people would say, the experience is, well, just by what you were saying, well, happiness is in having the car, the house, the happy the family, a wife they're getting along with, children that are behaving in a way they like.
Yes, I think this is a very interesting point. All those things are very good. All that Vedanta is saying is that none of those external things is the cause of happiness. Or none of those things are happiness. I just want to go back to this question of freedom. Now, so what we're looking at is we often find ourselves during the day, have you noticed that often we find ourselves in a state of mind where we are unhappy? Would you say that's fairly true?
Yes, I think that's I have that experience. I think it seems to be a common experience.
Yes, it is. And what happens is that we try to do something about that happiness. Would you also say that that's true?
Yes, that would be true.
Yeah. So we try to resolve happiness by doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is what my teacher calls seeking. Now, it's very sane to seek happiness and security. What she says is we're seeking the right thing in the wrong place.
So happiness, security is the right thing to be seeking, but we're looking for it in external objects, whether in the form of people, objects, places, situations, we're not going to find it there.
It's impossible. All that is going to lead to is frustration and psychological misery. And then when our minds are full of psychological misery and frustration, first of all, our minds are not clear. And secondly, the faculty that you know, of the intellect, which can penetrate into the meaning of things, our higher intellectual faculty. You know what I mean? And, that faculty that can see into the meaning of things, like what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's false, that isn't available to us.
Because we're so frustrated with not finding happiness in our normal actions.
Yes, and eventually as we get older, this builds up. There's a psychological build-up of unpleasant memories and all of that stuff. Now, so when we're talking about freedom now, I just want to clarify something here, because there's a lot of kind of, one of the interesting things that Swami Dayananda said to us in our first class, he said, the one thing I want to do is I want to cure you of your spiritual romanticism. Now, I just want to explain what he means by that. You see, we can think of all sorts of things when it comes to spirituality, and when we hear words like liberation, freedom, self-realization, all of these things that are in the spiritual marketplace, we can get this idea about what spiritual freedom is, or what freedom is, can't we? Total freedom.
Yeah.
Now, we have to be clear on what we're talking about. Now, what he says is a very interesting thing. He says this. He says we're talking about a freedom that exists, that is present, which is in spite of the limitations of the mind-sense-body complex. Now, I just want to explain that, okay?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So we're talking about a freedom in spite of the limitations of the mind-sense-body complex. Now, let's say, for example, am I as an individual, I'm living in the world, have I got a faculty of knowing, Kevin?
Yeah, well, normally the means of knowledge are seen as the eyes for seeing, the ears for hearing.
Touch. Right, but I've got a faculty of, just a faculty to know things, right? I have the ability to know things. Now, is that faculty fallible, or is it absolutely perfect?
I think it's fallible. You know, the hand is faster than the eye with magician tricks and the stone underneath the shell.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So we can't know everything. So when we go into a situation, an interpersonal situation, we're not going to see all the factors because we have limitations. Now, we can improve our faculties of cognizing the world, can't we?
Yeah.
But even if we've improved it, it's still limited because you can always improve more of it.
Yeah, there's always the sense it can always be improved. Yeah.
Right. So one thing we have is we have as a human being a fallible knowing abilities, a fallible knowing capacity. Now, freedom while living is not going to make me be able to see perfectly everything. This is not that my fallible functions of knowledge are not going to become omnipotent. Such an idea is stupid.
Does
that make
so
sense?
you're not going to become all-knowing.
No, I'm not going to become God. In the sense of that the fallible functions that belong to the individual, the endowments that we have, are not going to be magically transformed and become perfect, so that I can be enjoying this freedom while living, while still not seeing and making mistakes in terms of knowledge. I might not see what's happening. I might make a mistake, whatever. But this freedom stands without reference to this. This is what's in. Okay. Now, what about interpersonal skills? Now, have you noticed that some people have very good interpersonal skills?
Oh yeah, and some people can make a living from their skill as a communicator.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like politicians can be extremely skilled at communicating. Now, does it necessarily mean because I've got very good knowledge skills or interpersonal skills that means that I appreciate what freedom while living means?
No, it seems to me that there's some very good communicators or extremely wealthy people who can function very well in whatever services or goods they provide, and still they're not happy.
Right, because what we're talking about is we're talking about limited psychological functions, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Or psychosocial functions like being able to talk and things like that.
Yeah.
Right? So the thing is that all of us, you see, so what's important in this study is we have to accept the fact that as an individual, our psychological or our knowing faculties and capacities are limited, but that's not important, because the basis of happiness is not our functions.
Mm-hmm.
The basis of happiness in Vedanta is what we are in reality.
Mm-hmm.
So the basis of so we've talked about the knowing faculties. So interpersonal skills. Sociopaths can be extremely skilled socially.
Yeah.
And all of us have. Some of us are going to be very, very skilled socially. Some of us aren't. When I was younger, I was hopeless. I mean, I'm still not that good. I had all my head in a book all my life. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes what happens is that we can measure ourselves against these functions, and in our culture we do. But the freedom that we're talking about in Vedanta is being happy while living. And what Swami Dayananda does is that when you're being this happiness or being this freedom, this is what makes you wise. Not all your knowledge about Vedanta.
That's interesting.
No, do you mean because the Vedanta isn't a whole lot of information that we learn about. It is a means. It is simply a means to be able to recognize what this freedom is, and to be able to abide in this freedom while living. That's what Vedanta is. Any other notion we have of it is wrong. It's incorrect. Some people take Vedanta as a philosophy, for example, a spiritual philosophy. You know what I mean? Something like that. Now, so we've got knowledge, we've got interpersonal skills. Now we've also got material skills, haven't we? Do you know what I mean? If we're trained in psychology, we've got skills to do with that. If we're trained in accountancy, we've got skills to do with that. We're trained in carpentry, we've got skills. We have material skills. And every being has different kinds of material skills, right?
Yeah.
Now, are they perfect?
No, there always seems to be improvement. Although some people seem to be very successful with their skill base,
but they're still limited. This is the point: is that no matter what the skill base is, the material skills, it's very good and useful to have in life. Does that make sense? It's useful for living. Yeah. But it is not happiness, and it is not the basis of happiness. This is the whole point.
Well, some people are very happy when they've got a good skill set, and they seem to be very proud. But I'm not sure whether that makes them completely happy.
Well, then again, first of all, notice the words. Does that make an object making me happy? In Vedanta, there's no object that actually makes you happy. It may seem that it's making you happy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think
I don't want to go too much into that yet. All I'm saying is that the external object doesn't make us happy. There's nothing in the world that makes us happy in terms of Vedanta. But all I'm concentrating on right now is the fact that we can have the presence that the presence of this freedom that Vedanta talks about does not make our capacities more perfect.
No.
It exists in spite of the limitations of these capacities, or the excellence of these capacities. I mean, otherwise what people are going to go is, oh, I'm obviously not getting it because I didn't read that situation properly. Do you see what I mean? Because we're not trying to improve we're not trying to improve the functions of the individual. We've got one interest here, to be able to recognize this freedom that already exists and to be able to abide in this freedom while living, while this fallible functioning still goes on.
Mm. Some of those functions and abilities may improve when there is a freedom or well-being there.
That's also true, but that is not the purpose. That's a consequence.
Mm.
And
Okay.
it's not a good idea to put your attention on that.
No.
Because otherwise you will confuse the different contexts, which we're going to go into. Okay? Now, The other thing is this, is that, so because we're talking about a recognition, in other words, a knowing, do you know what I mean? We're talking about the appreciation of or coming alive to what freedom or happiness is, and then abiding in that happiness while living, right? Now, is the basis of that happiness or freedom religious belief?
Well, there seems to be lots of people with religious belief who aren't happy.
Right. So what we're talking about is when we're talking about Vedanta, we're not talking about religious belief. Religious belief, the basis of this freedom is not religious belief, because that's something external, right? The basis of this freedom is what we are in reality in Vedanta. Okay.
Is that well, it's not a religious belief. Is it a religious vision?
You could say that, but what I'm just trying to do right now is to distinguish the basis of it. Because people from the outside might think that Vedanta is a religion. It might have religious expressions, but it is not. Its nature is not religious in terms of religious belief.
Okay. Yeah.
So, or is this freedom while living? Is this a philosophy, a spiritual philosophy?
Well, I think that's a common view.
It's good. There's a common view, but obviously it's not a spiritual philosophy, because a spiritual philosophy is ideas about life. There's even spiritual ideas, but that spiritual ideas and all of that, that is not the recognition of what freedom is and the appreciation and abiding in that freedom while living, is it?
No, so it's quite different. Like, I think this might cause a lot of confusion, and certainly because most people think it is a philosophy. From the
people on the outside think it's a philosophy. Yes, they think it's it's Indian philosophy, right? That's a common notion about Vedanta.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at here is that what our Swami Atmaprakashananda says is we must be very clear on the end. We need to know what are we interested. So here I am. I'm unhappy right now for whatever reason. So what is important is that right now, if I can become aware of and appreciate what it means to be free right now, right here as I am, right? That would be a good thing, because that would resolve the unhappiness, wouldn't it?
I think that's what you're saying, yeah.
Yes. So, and what Swami Dayananda says is that when you're being happy or being free, you are being wise. He says, otherwise you're being otherwise. Now, just to clarify this, when we talk, in the Bhagavad Gita, there is a conversation between the Lord Krishna and a warrior called Arjuna. Now, Arjuna, there's an interesting thing about Arjuna. Arjuna was a magnificent person in the sense of, in terms of the world, he was a magnificent person. He was good looking, he was a fantastic warrior, he was highly skilled, he was extremely popular. Basically, and no one would ever assume that he had a problem.
That he was lacking anything.
he seemed to have everything. That's right. Everything that everybody feels is what's going to do it for them.
Mm.
All right?
Yeah.
And yet, he became a basket case.
Mm.
Right? Because he was confronted with the fact that even though he had all these skills, or even though he had all of this status, even though he had all of the thing, he was lacking something.
Mm. By a basket case, you mean he was overcome with grief?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
didn't know what to do.
He was emotionally in turmoil, yes.
But he had enough common sense to ask Krishna for help.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
But the thing was that, first of all, even though in spite of all of the magnificence of his functions and his social standing and all of that stuff, he recognized a human problem. He recognized that he had this fundamental problem, this fundamental immaturity.
Mm.
Now, this is quite extraordinary, because what happens is that when we are good at certain things, we can feel a little bit kind of, smug. Do you know what I mean? We feel kind of, I'm pretty cool. And in our culture, there's a whole movement of cultural heroism now. I'm my own person. I follow my passion. I'm always positive. I mean, it's just over the top. But anyway, but so here was Arjuna. And even though he had all of, in terms of his knowledge of people, he could read people, he could read situations. He was extremely skilled. Do you know what I mean? And yet, with all of those capacities, he was still dependent upon his happiness on all of those things.
On external things.
And so the thing is, we're talking about, so he didn't need to improve in that way. So when we're talking about Vedanta, we're not talking about improving our functions.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? Suddenly, so we're talking about an appreciation of a freedom that always exists, which is available for recognition as our very selves. This is the whole point. And with the recognition, it is impossible to abide in that recognition or understanding while living.
That it is possible to abide in that recognition.
Yeah, to abide. Otherwise, what's the point? I mean, there are some people who think, all I have to do is, I know I'm the self, I'm consciousness. Whoop-de-dee-doo-dee-dum.
Well, some people say, I'm the self, or they have, when they're in classes with teachers, they feel a quietness of mind, a well-being, and but then it's not available when they're not in that situation.
Right. Well, this is the whole point. We can assume as a basis, at any one moment when we are unhappy in any way, we are not being wise. In other words, that we then don't have this. We're not in possession of this self-knowledge that Swami Dayananda is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fact. So what? So when we're looking at Arjuna, the fact of the matter is that we're talking about. Our Swamini gives an example of, there's a certain type of fruit, I think it's a melon of some sort, and it has this cord that connects to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now this cord represents dependence on things, right? But as this fruit becomes riper and riper and riper, right? Over time, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like you have an epiphany. Mm-hmm. There is a process of maturation or maturing. When it's fully mature, the cord snaps as a natural result of the growth of the maturity. So when go.
So, but with a human, like with an adult human, they're going to say, well, I am mature physically.
Yeah, I've dealt with that. The thing is this, of course they're going to say that. Okay, but we're talking about, there are some people who can appreciate the fact that there is something unhappy about being human. Okay, so if people have the idea, I'm a fantastically happy person, which they do have notions like that, that defends them against their self-dissatisfaction. But I don't want to go into that right now. But just that, what we're talking about, where was it on? What was it talking about? Oh yeah. So we've got this process of growth, maturation and maturity. Do you know what I mean? So like a process where the fruit becomes ripe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we're talking about in Vedanta, we're talking about a process. With not only, you see, on one hand we have this recognition, right? This recognition that what we're going for is a recognition of freedom that is complete, and to be able to abide in this freedom while living. But the problem is that because we're so dependent on the world, right?
Yeah.
And because we're constantly seeking happiness where it isn't, we're constantly getting upset. We're building unhappiness into ourselves in a sense. We're not doing it. This is just the process. And our minds are clouded. So in order to be able to appreciate this freedom, right, we have to undergo a process of maturing. In other words, preparation.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we're talking about Vedanta, we're talking about two things. We're talking about the end that we're going for. And it's very important, first of all, to understand what this end is and to understand its value.
So what are we saying is the end again?
Being able to be free or be happy while living, and which is not dependent upon anything, not dependent on the condition of my body, not contingent on what's happening in my mind, not contingent on other human beings or situations. We're talking about being free. So we're talking about a freedom and a happiness that cannot be added to or be taken away by the presence or absence of objects.
Okay.
Now, we also have to understand the value of it, because otherwise, if we don't value this end, we won't tend towards it.
No.
It's not going to happen. This is, and my teacher says we have to be very clear on what are we living this life for. Now, some people are living this life for money. We can easily live for life. When I'm trying to get approval, I'm living my life for approval. When I'm trying to get happiness from excitement and stimulation, I'm trying to get happiness I'm living my life for stimulation. When you see, often what we're living our life for. What are we living our life for? Like to have as many kicks before I cark it. You know what I mean? So the question of what am I living this life for? Now, our Swami says we must be very clear on this is the basis of our practice, that this becomes the context of our life. Now, this is important because, and it brings us up to the last point, is that when we're clear on what we're living this life for, can you just turn that off, Kevin?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's right. So when we're clear on what we're living this life for, that can now form you see, the context of our life determines the meaning of our life. Does that make sense? So, you see, it's very easy to say, you see, what our Swami says that makes us spiritual actually is when we're pursuing knowledge, when we're actually seeking to know what is and appreciate what is. Now, when I'm having an argument with my spouse, do you think I'm actually seeking knowledge at that time?
No, I don't feel you seeking knowledge at that time.
No, I'm often more seeking to be right. So the thing is that, but sometimes then suddenly because of the teaching, I go, okay, what's really happening here? The moment I begin to inquire into what is really happening here, do you see what I mean? And what really is the truth? This is what makes me spiritual. Nothing else. This is what in Vedanta, when we stop, the conversion in Vedanta is, instead of seeking the meaning and purpose of our life is status and power and all of these things, which it is to a greater or lesser degree, social approval, looking good in our own eyes and the eyes of others. This is what this whole human life is about. This is normally...
That's what it's commonly about, but you're saying the real purpose is seeking knowledge so that you're free and happy all the time.
Yes, so we've got to watch the word all the time, but yes, but happy while living. It's not in time, you see. So the thing is that, so what we're doing is that we what are we living this life for? Often we're not living this life for freedom. We're living it for status. We're living it to look good in our own eyes and the eyes of other people. We're living it for to have exciting experiences. There's many purposes. But what our teacher says is that unless we're very clear on our end, they've got. I'm not going to say this because it's because of other people who are listening to this who are not in Vedanta, but they have a particular Sanskrit word that took me ages to learn because it's so long. But it means being very clear on what our end is. Because, you see, in this way, you see, normally what happens is living life as it is can become an end in itself. I live this life for what's here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think that would be the common experience. So
yes. So what we're looking at is that living becomes a means to this freedom. Now, this is very important. Living becomes a means to this freedom and happiness. And we're going to be going into this when we talk about when we're going to transform our living into a preparatory exercise, a preparatory discipline, which is Karma Yoga.
Well, that sounds very interesting, Bede, because I think most people would say, well, they're living this life to obtain objects, whether houses, spouse, partner, whatever, making money, and even though they're not, we're saying they don't find happiness, complete happiness, or any steady happiness in those pursuits.
Well, what our teacher says, we need those things for our living, but that is different from what are we living this life for. So it's good to have friends, good to have money, all of those things.
Yeah.
Necessary for the living, right? But it is not. But what we're going to do is we're going to still pursue those things.
Yeah.
But we're going to make the very pursuing of those things, we're going to convert it into a means, our daily activities. Does that make sense? Into a means to make us more and more mature so we can appreciate what it means, first of all, to be free, and secondly, to be able to abide in that freedom while living. And this is our whole and entire emphasis in Vedanta.
And so when you're saying being free, you're saying being free and being happy. It's synonymous, aren't you?
Well, yes, because what our Swami says is that when you have fire, which is freedom, right, you can't help but have hot. So when there is freedom, there is happiness. This is why if at any one moment, and you see, she says another very interesting thing, experience can only teach us two things. She says the first thing is it can teach you that there is no thing that can ever give you happiness. That's the first. The first,
lasting happiness. There's an appearance.
No, not even like it doesn't give you happiness.
We'll have to look into that question.
We're going to go into that later, but it appears to give you happiness. And if any particular object was happiness, then it would always make you happy. But many people fall in love with a person, and then a year later they hate the person. So obviously happiness does not exist in the object. We think it does, that's true, but we're not. But so I don't want to get. I just want to go into the principle. Is that the first thing in terms of experience? What the experiences can help us come to the discrimination, to the understanding that there is nothing that can give us happiness. This is very important, because while we believe that things and people can give us happiness, we can't help but be obsessed by them.
No.
And when we're obsessed by something, we can't possibly become interested in what, in the end, that Vedanta offers. We have a passion for objects, and so that therefore it's very necessary for us to become more and more dispassionate. So that's the first. Okay, so that's the first thing. Experience cannot give us happiness. Now the second one that she says, which has been very important for me, she says experience can show us how much we've ascertained the vision. Now, this is really important, because I can have all sorts of ideas about how much I understand Vedanta. Right? If I might be able to go through, I might be able to quote verses, I might know all of the thing. The thing is this: if at any one moment I am in any form of unhappiness, whether that's boredom, I'm bored, I'm annoyed, I'm sad, I'm anxious, I'm angry, you know what I mean? I'm distracted. Right? Any of these types of forms of unhappiness, right? I, at that moment, right, that tells me I am not being wise. It tells me that I am ignorant. I am suffering from ignorance right now. It doesn't. Now, this is so important to recognize. This recognition, and this can only happen the more we appreciate what freedom is, relatively speaking, the more we can appreciate what unfreedom is, if you like. Right? So, and we're going to be going into that. But what I wanted to do today was this, is that, you see, we have to be able, the practice can only occur within a certain context. Now, we always live life in a certain context, don't we? Now, if I said to you, the man attacked the other, the man got a knife and split open the other man's belly, does that sound pretty violent?
Sounds very violent.
So what happens is it has a certain meaning for you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But then if I told you that it's a young surgeon under enemy fire performing a life-saving operation, what happens to the meaning of what you're looking at?
Totally transformed.
Right. So context determines meaning. Now this is important. Now, you see, so if I stay in the same context, I'm still obsessed with looking good in my own eyes and the eyes of other people, which is a normal, natural condition for us as human beings before Vedanta. Okay? Okay. I'm concerned about attaining happiness and status and getting social approval and all of this sort of stuff in order to be happy. We're not talking about, it's good to have friends, it's good to have money, but when we're having in order to be happy, right? That forms a context of my life. So my life means something. So what happens is when someone does something that I don't like, right? You know, the meaning I give to that experience is I'm unhappy because they've done something I don't like. Right? Now, but in the context of Vedanta, does that make sense? The meaning is, I'm not being wise. I am not being free. You see what I mean? The meaning is entirely different. So with the right context, we start to that what happens is it transforms the meaning of everyday experiences. Because you see, otherwise, if I still am in the same context as I've normally been all my life, it doesn't matter whether I study Vedanta. It's only going to be theory.
Yeah, well, I suspect that's, many people, I know many people who studied Vedanta for over 30 years, and I have a sense that they see it as a philosophy, and they might be very proficient at Sanskrit, and no.
That's just, yeah, but yeah, there's many, and there's like, there are various organisations that teach Vedanta, but we're talking about Swami Dayananda's Vedanta. But the whole point is that unless this is understood clearly, does that make sense? That unless we understand what our end is,
yeah,
we remain in the same context that we've had. And the thing is, if we're caught in that context, it's because of what we value, by the way. If we, when we are valuing approval, when we're valuing success, all as a means to happiness, that forms the context of our life. That is the context of our life. But when we come to appreciate that, like what our Swamini says, what is the meaning of our life? What is that? Why are we living this life? Right? When we understand is that what are we living this life for? When we live our life for the discovery of what freedom and happiness is, and then the abiding in that freedom while living, right?
Yeah.
That forms a context for our study of Vedanta. And that transforms the meaning of our everyday experiences. So when I'm unhappy, I won't go, I'm unhappy because of. I will go, oh, I am unhappy. And we're going to go into this, but the meaning of that unhappiness now is going to be different for us, because we're going to say, I'm obviously not being wise.
Yeah.
I'm obviously suffering from dependence on the world for my happiness. This is a new view. If I'm not seeing my unhappiness in this light, then I'm not doing Vedanta, because Vedanta is a way of seeing our life in a clear and objective way. When we're looking at our life in a clear and objective way, we are doing Vedanta.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, it's a very interesting day.
Okay, so what we're going to go in this conversation is we're going to be going into Vedantic practice, and we're going to be talking about this emotional transformation. So the transformation in us as an individual, so that we can come to a point where the quality of our mind and our experience improves to a point where we can appreciate and understand what it means to be free while living, in spite of the limitations of the mind-sense complex. Okay?
Yep, very good. Looking forward to it, Bede.
Okay, mate. All right, we'll see you later. See you next week. Bye-bye.